Hello, today we're going to work on this Mag21 fork. I presume that this fork dates from around about 94 and upwards. There's nothing wrong with the fork in particular, but it is dirty and I think it will definitely work better with some new oil. We're going to aim to remove most of the parts, the lower legs especially. I think it's pretty similar to the Mag20, so we're going to pretty much follow the same procedure. We're going to now need to remove these caps. It's not number 19 like I said before, sorry, it's number 22. I'm going to begin to pour some of the oil out now. Start to remove the brace. We're going to have these circlips to remove, so you will need to have a type of a pin spanner to be able to take it off. You can now put the air caps back on each end. We're going to be blasting these out. For the next stage, we're going to be pumping up the lower legs, or filling up with air, and we're going to, by doing so, pull out the lower legs and have access to the bottom half of the fork. Normally you would need to have a seal puller like in the recommended in the manual. Obviously that's extremely rare and unfindable, so we're going to be doing it like this. This is fairly dangerous, so at least you could damage something. So put this on the ground when you're doing it, and you're going to put your feet on both ends, and that should kind of stop things flying off into the air. Yeah, that last one I didn't even capture on camera. I'm telling you now, it's powerful. It flew off against the wall at a really, really high rate. This side I've approached closer to the wall to kind of take some of the impact. On the other end, we're going to have this circlip to remove, which is going to give us access to all the bushings and the seals for cleaning. Both sides are obviously the same on these forks. My recommendation is just to undo one, clean, and then after the other one will still be assembled. Then it will make it easier for you to know the order of things. You can also, by the way, remove the crown. I'm not going to do that for the moment. If you want to remove the adjuster rod, you're going to need to take off the circlip underneath here. You will need to screw the cap all the way down here so that it gives you, so that this becomes raised and you have bare access to unclip that part. You'll now need to re-unscrew this part. Unlike the Mag 20, it looks like this one's made out of plastic. How cheapo. Wouldn't be surprised that this tip breaks there where the cap goes onto the dial. Apparently you can remove this as well using some kind of tool that fits into these holes. I've tried to remove it and I've not been able to take it off on the Mag 20 nor this one. And I don't really need to. I mean, it will give you better access for cleaning, I guess, if you can manage to screw it off. That's everything done. I'm going to clean up, and then after I can confirm the sizing of the seals, and we can reassemble again. Everything is ready to put back together again. You're going to need some fork oil. I think it's recommended between 2 and 8 WT. And so either get some bike specific oil or a fork oil, it doesn't really matter. While I was cleaning the bottom of the legs with some degreaser, these came out. They're like plastic type of washers, rubber. Anyway, they were very seated and stuck. Make sure you don't lose those, and we're going to need to put them back in as well when we're going to assemble the legs. For the sills, you can still buy the, you can actually find places to replace them. I'll just give you the measurements though to confirm, but they basically do, their outer diameter is 35, interior is going to be 25.4, and the thickness is going to be 7. If you've done like me, you've left one side with all the parts, and then that way it's easier to remember how to put them back on the order. First thing we're going to do is put the main oil seal, and there's going to be a very thin washer that just goes after it. Now once you've done that, there's also a very small O-ring seal. We then have this metal bushing to put in. You'll notice it's stamped 9407. You need to make sure you put the this bushing first and not the other one, as the other one apparently is just slightly different in diameter. You then have the this long plastic bushing. We then have the next bushing, which is 9403, and this one's going to go up with the lettering in the normal order. We'll then have another bushing. This one's going to have a kind of a ridge on the top. You want to put that in going upwards. You then have this plastic bushing, and the larger diameters going upwards. And finally the spring. We're now going to put the circlip that holds everything in place. Now we're going to need to stick on the parts on this plunger adjuster rod. First thing is this kind of plastic spacer washer. You then got this bushing part. the spring. And 2 metallic spacers on the top of that. You then have this metallic circlip to put back on top of all of that. Mine's a little bit bent out of shape. I'm going to have to try and bend it in. You now need to put the adjuster rod back into the tube. And it's going to thread in through here, and then we're going to have a small circlip to put at the end of that. The easiest way is to get the top cap and fit it back on and then screw it in. And you'll see on the other end it's screwing outwards. Grab the correct leg, and we're going to be seating the oil seal into the lower leg as well as all the bushing parts. To do that, I'm going to put a 1/8 space on the top, and then I'm going to be using a headset crown race tool to push it in. Otherwise you can use some kind of plastic tubing to get this in without damaging the oil seal. Before we do anything then, I'm going to now put the plastic washer at the bottom here, make sure it's flat, and then we're going to push the bushings and the top half of the fork back into this tube. You can put some oil or Teflon grease on the seal as well as the rest of the parts to help it slide in easier. For seating the oil seal back into the lower leg, what I've done is I've taken a 1/8 spacer, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my race setting tool to then push it down into it. Alternatively, you can just get a piece of plastic tubing, and that fits over obviously the tube and then seats onto the oil seal. At worst, I guess you could just get like a really blunt object and tap it in gently going around. You're going to want to seat that deep enough so that you can then after put the final clip on top here, and it goes into that type of ridge on the interior of the lower tube. Make sure the snap ring is properly seated in the that kind of ledge inside. Use a flat-headed screwdriver to just poke around to make sure that is properly seated. Now you can stick the boot back on, and we can screw that one back in here, and we can repeat the process on here and clean up all this. You need roughly 3 millimeters of this tube sticking out from the top. Funnily enough, whoever worked with this before hadn't done that. I want to clean these dials. You need to take off this little circlip. It's very annoying to take off. I just managed to get it in the end though. Be careful when you open this up. There's a ball bearing just behind here. And there's a spacer and an O-ring seal just behind that. On these parts, once you've cleaned them, I would put some Teflon grease, but you can probably put lithium-based grease since it doesn't look like it's in contact with any of the oil or the seals, for that matter. So put the little ball bearing back into one of the holes. You can then put the dial back on, and at the back of that there's a small little O-ring seal. And then the spacer washer right here, and then we can put the clip back on. We've reached the stage of adding the oil. What you need to do now is find one of the manuals that are online, and you're going to need to put the amount that you need to put in depending on your weight and how you want the fork to fill. Generally it's recommended on the manual but to use 2 to 8 WT oil, and it's also recommended that you have an air pocket of 40 to 45 millimeters. I'm going to use a ruler to be able to determine the height of the oil. Oh, and by the way, you're going to want to compress these legs all the way up to the top. I'm going to move the legs up and down to help circulate some of the oil into the bottom part. For the little plastic adjuster rods that are in here, you really want them to be aligned when you're going to put that top cap in, and you can easily miss them, and I just noticed that. What I've done is I've taken a small 8, it's a number 8 socket, and I've turned them all the way to the highest point. And when we're going to put the top cap in, you want to make sure that it's gone onto it properly, and you'll be able to actually test it, because when you turn the dial, it should at one point max out. You won't be able to turn anymore because obviously it's reached its limit, and reversely the other side. And if it keeps turning, it means that it's missed that plastic adjuster rod inside the tube. Finally got that in the end. Painful, man, really painful. But at least it works. I've kind of destroyed the top here a little bit here, but oh well. I'm going to give these a pump now and see how they feel like. So I roughly just put them at 2 bars. I'll need to be more accurate with a suspension pump. But they feel very nice at first glance. They don't look like they're leaking. If I was you, I'd probably just pump these up and leave them to see if there's any air that comes out before trying this out in reality. But I think we've globally done everything and talked about everything on this fork. So thank you for listening, and until next time, peace out.